Hello, and welcome to GT Mackay's Cope and Seethe podcast. How are we all doing this evening? Is there anyone even watching this? I can't tell at the minute. Yeah, 7 of you. Settle in, settle in. I ain't going to go into a dance or nothing like that. I ain't seen. There's no comments, which is quite unusual. Are you all taking a stand of silence because of my tardiness, or what? My lack of punctuality set you off, or they're just not coming in yet because who knows why. But no beer. No, I'm actually funny you mentioned that. I think I'm gonna curb the beer for a while, just because. I mean, I think alcohol in general is going to raise your estrogen levels, but beer, I feel, probably does it more, or at least that's what I hear, and that's my cope for this week. But yeah, I'm just on the wine tonight, so we were waiting until 8:30. Oh, because all right, I'm here, aren't I? I might make it 8:15 in the future because that seems to be exactly where I am actually ready. But yeah, well, we've got a few more of the same actually. I've got a little thing to add today, but not really anything that significant. It's more of a recommendation of a creator who I've often recommended in the past, and it's just a brief clip of his, but I found it quite interesting, and yeah, well, I'll get to that in a bit. Then we've got I've got a couple of movies to talk about, but not one's one of them's a sci-fi film, I think from 1984, maybe 80, 85, 86. I can't quite recall. It's a funny one. And one that I suspect a few of the guys will know, but yeah, we'll get to that when we get to it. Another one that's a German film that came out, I think, last year and was all right. Don't have too much to say about it. And yeah, I'm going to probably give a bit of my thoughts on the Fargo season 5 and The Curse, actually, because I did finish that as well. And maybe a little bit on True Detective, because I'm a bit on the fence with it. I think there's some really good points to that show so far, but there's also bits that I find a little bit cringe, and they worry me a little bit, just because, yeah, it's so the two leading women in that are just so desperately trying to be men. It gets a bit absurd, but you know, it's not a terrible, or it isn't terrible so far, but it gets a little bit like, okay, yeah, we get the point. We get the point. You're masculine women, right? We already knew that by the fact that you're fucking detectives, but let's just really double down on that, just so we're clear. These aren't the, but they seem to be acting more like butch queers than straight women, which apparently they are. I mean, who knows what that even means in today's world, but yeah, it's a little bit much. But yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll go on about that later. And yeah, just a bit more of Incel My Ride. Got another chap waiting for that one, and that's probably going to be about it, I suppose. Yeah, and I mean, all right, I'll talk about that first because I don't actually have a poster of that yet, so I'll move into it from here. But yeah, update your fond counter. What, by £1? Oh yeah, that's a fair point. Actually, I will do that. What was it? 11 quid in the end. And that's all. I actually, maybe there was about I'll round it up because I think there was another 10 or so that came in. Thank you. So where the fuck is that? Let me just get on with this. Feel free to donate as well if you wish. That would be nice. Oh yeah, well, I'll do that here. So the True Detective, I mean, I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. It's been a bit up and downs ever since the first season, which is probably the greatest, How many episodes is it? Is it only 8 or is it 10? I can't remember. But it's one that commands a lot of respect and probably isn't really comparable to any, despite the fact that it is using a very typical detective partnership kind of trope where the two leading men don't really get along, but they kind of do. They respect each other because of the work they can do, but personally speaking, they are at each other's throats quite a bit. But it has elements of philosophy, anti-natalism especially, but also just one of the best scripts I think that has ever existed, especially in a TV show, and performances that are second to none. Ross Cole as a character, I think, is one of the greatest, period. And yeah, so really, it set itself up for failure by trying to, emulate it so soon. And there's parts of the second season that are all right, but in general, it sucks. The only thing decent about it, I'd say, is Colin Farrell's performance, and the chick in it. She's all right. Vince Vaughn tries, but his character's so cliched that it doesn't work. And the soundtrack works quite well. I'll give it that, but too well, probably. The third season, it did pick up quite a bit. I thought I quite enjoyed it overall. In some ways, I found it a bit more depressing, and I liked the way it delved into kind of dementia and memory, and how it kind of sort of alluded to the idea of things repeating like it does in the first one. And in the fourth season so far, there has already been a couple of nods to the idea of, say, the eternal return and life being a flat circle and all this kind of stuff, but only in like kind of tokenistic kind of Easter eggs, from what I've seen, where you see the spiral symbol and things like that. What in a positive way, though, at least from the first episode, I do think it builds the atmosphere very well. There's something almost more traditionally horror-esque going on with it, where it's kind of showing you hallucinations and things that might be there but can't be explained and things like that. So that works really well, and it's got a really nice kind of, obviously it being filmed in Alaska, I think it is, or wherever this snow place. Whenever it's America, I just assume it's Alaska, but or maybe Minnesota. I think it might be in Minnesota actually, but yeah, the color grading and stuff's really nice. It's kind of got this metallic blue that blends with the whiteness of everything that's going on, and I thought that was pretty cool. It seems like they're really pulling their finger out to try and convey the world in which it's set. And I do think it's a good move, like going away from the kind of southern area of the first one. And it's almost like they're trying to make this the kind of more official sequel. And it even has its own kind of subtitle of Night Country and all this kind of stuff. So they're quite literally in 24-hour nighttime, because of the way it works where they are. I think for the duration of the piece, maybe until the end, it will be in complete darkness because of some sort of ecliptic kind of whatever it is. And the story seems interesting. There's this kind of case that they didn't solve in the past, or at least one of the characters, which is pretty reminiscent of the first season, although it isn't told in a kind of crisscrossing linear format. But at the same time, it's intriguing. I'll give it that much. And yeah, some parts of it where, I mean, these guys working in a lab, something happens. You're not really sure. It's almost more supernatural actually from what I've seen thus far. Potentially some sort of weird experiment was going on or whatever. So I'm not really sure about that side of things, if I'm honest. But there was a great scene I thought at the beginning where this hunter guy is rifling at these deer, and they're all kind of crowded around, and everything's that really bright white kind of color. But then as the sun goes down for the last time, they all kind of fucking go mental, and then I mean, I kind of thought they all committed suicide or something, because they kind of start charging at him like in a stampede kind of scenario, and then you just see them jumping off the edge, and you don't really see the aftermath of that. But I think it cuts into the opening credits actually, but that was intriguing, and I thought nicely done. Then Billie Eilish kicks in, and if that song hadn't been used so many fucking times already, it probably would have been alright, but it feels a little bit cheap. Especially when you've got, such a great opener in the first season, and Leonard Cohen, I think, is the second one. And, I mean, I guess with it being female-driven, that's fine. Kind of. I don't know. It felt a little bit off to me. And mainly because it's already been done so many times, and it's almost as if that whole hype has gone down. So I don't really understand why they're using that. Personally speaking, I could have thought of, yeah, I don't know. And if you wanted to use a female singer, by all means, but pick a better song. Pick one that's not as well known, but. Or at least not so modern, because you don't. I mean, there is a bit of a Zoomer thing in it, like with one of the characters who I assume is Jodie Foster's previous relationship when she was with, I guess, a black guy. I don't really know. It hasn't got into that yet. But she's like lesbianing and filming herself having sex with some 16-year-old girl and all this. And it's like, oh, what are you doing? That kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, all right, we get it. The women in here lead everything when it comes to sex, detective work, all of it, basically. And yeah, as Melissa mentioned, there is a sex scene in it, which is kind of surprising, because you kind of suspect that she's of the lesbian persuasion. Although I'm going to guess that she's probably bi, just to cover all bases. But the way she fucks the guy is basically, she might as well be pegging him, because she's on top. And she's like fucking super muscular, basically holding this dude down. And the guy she's banging is like pretty beta, I guess. Like he seems fairly innocuous, and I mean, fine. I didn't really see. I mean, I guess it establishes their relationship, and then I mean, she steals his SpongeBob SquarePants toothbrush, I think it was, which, yeah, I wasn't sure what that was supposed to add. I prefer Jodie Foster's character, if I'm honest. I think she's a better actor, and is likely going to steal the show in that regard. Not to say that the other woman is bad. She's all right. I haven't seen anything dodgy yet. I just feel it's all a little bit over the top. There's one bit with a guy who gets done for domestic violence, and she sees him on the street after the arrest and stuff, and then pours Baileys into his fucking gas tank, because I mean, he's a douche. I'll give it that, but it's all of this very aggressive kind of behavioural tropes going on, and I kind of wonder whether that's actually going to be in any way significant, or whether it was just showing us the Bailey's product placement along with, I think, Budweiser. There was quite a few scenes like that where it seemed a bit like, okay, products, it's the product moment. Is this actually going to be relevant at any point? Maybe. I don't know. It's a bit too early to say. I think the atmosphere of it works quite well. I quite liked the son. At the beginning, it was a little confusing, but Jodie Foster's like ex is also a cop, and you can tell that there's a kind of bit of conflict between them. But it seems like it's been years, and their son works alongside them, and he's got a bit more, I suppose, IT skills, and he's clearly very committed to his work and wants to prevail at it and all this kind of stuff. And I think their relationship's quite intriguing because she's very authoritarian, and yeah, I'm wondering where that will go. Where it seems like the ex-husband is more interested in his mail order bride. I mean, actually, the more I describe it, the more it starts sounding really woke. Actually, like bit too much. That's what I'm kind of worried about a little bit. There was one moment where fucking Jodie Foster's phone goes off and her kid goes, "Oh, is that a Tinder match?" And she's like, "No, it's my fantasy football notification kind of thing." It's like, oh, right, yeah. She's a man's woman, basically. But it's like, yeah, we got it. We got it. It's pretty fucking obvious. You knew that from the beginning when she arrests this woman who's drunk driving, who turns out to be a bit of a hussy or whatever. But she's like whoops her ass and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, right, yeah, okay. She's a tough little cookie, this one. She's tough. You don't need to keep rubbing it in my face. It's get on with the story, basically. But I did enjoy it for what it's worth, and I'll be intrigued to see what or where they go with it. Apparently, it is very good. I just kind of worry that a lot of those articles claiming as such are kind of overlooking some of the pretty over the top moments. I mean, I wouldn't say it's shitting on men so far, but at the same time, it's kind of making them very secondary characters, which can be fine. I mean, I think it would be even more so fine if it didn't try to make it so obvious that that's what it was doing. But again, I might be speaking too soon, and it could just be the opener and trying to establish their characters and what they're like currently. And clearly there's some conflict between her and this other woman who was once working on a case that she couldn't let go of, and that seems to be, or at least she thinks it's connected to the disappearance of these lab technicians. Not really sure why or how, considering that one is about a woman who got brutally stabbed and beaten to death, and whereas this one is about a bunch of dudes disappearing. Although there is a tongue that gets found after the kind of incident, that is, yeah, apparently belongs to a female. I'm kind of speaking from what I remember, so I could be getting a few of these facts wrong, to be honest. But yeah, an intriguing start. I mean, yeah, 6 episodes. I'd give the episode 6, to be honest. I didn't really think much else of it. You know, maybe a 7. Like, I'm intrigued, but I thought there could have been more going on, because you kind of realise that obviously the fucking case with the more Native American woman is going to be in conjunction with the other one, maybe because of the previous True Detectives, but it took the whole episode to basically get to that point, and I kind of felt like it could have set it up a little bit more in terms of what we know currently. But yeah, maybe a lot of the things that they had in it do actually connect quite well. That's one says that with hope, basically. Yeah. I felt like that quite a little bit. It was kind of a bit weird to watch it in with that in mind, because it was a bit like, okay. And then you have like a copy of Blood Meridian sitting on the bed at one point, and I thought, is that just a nod to McCarthy because he's like dead now? I don't know. Is that is that relevant? And they had a good bit with what is it, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where it's a scene at the end and they're singing that song, and it was just constantly playing at one point. And of course, Jodie Foster's the one who knows how to turn it off, because all the men are too stupid to fucking realize that behind one of the cabinets there's going to be the the plug. And I was just a bit like, why? Yeah, like that was playing constantly. This one bit that I think it was probably because it was the DVD menu, and so it was just repeating this fucking song over and over and over again. And they were all too stupid to figure out where that was coming from, as if there was like no electrical output behind this. It was so dumb. Like, it was just like, why is that in there? I mean, it was kind of funny and all that, but it just felt a bit like, what is this proving? What, that she's astute, or that she knows where or how electricity works? At least in a kind of plug in, plug out manner. Yet all the guys around don't seem to. Fuck off. It was a bit like, yeah. The more I think about it, actually, the more there were parts of it that kind of got under my skin a little bit, because it was just like, you need to work harder to get that across. It's fine if you want to show that, you know, Foster's character takes no shit or whatever, or will find the solution quicker. But you need to work a bit harder than things like that, in my opinion. So, thoughts on dopamine detox? I mean, do you mean as a practice, Inea? I mean, I've heard a lot about it. It's a very difficult thing to judge, I would imagine, because, you know, I mean, how do you? I mean, I suppose a lot of the time when people are going on about that, especially if it's young men, I think what they're really talking about is their porn addiction and phone obsession and things of that nature. So it's like things that are constantly raising their dopamine, or at least setting it off like some sort of lie detector or whatever, where it's just constantly pinballing about their brain. Obviously, I think that's something that you should try to remove quite a bit, because it doesn't work in a myriad of ways, mostly because if you're getting that kind of rush from an inanimate device, where really your kind of pleasure reward system is totally out of whack. So you've done nothing to really achieve that surge of dopamine, which is the problem. But the other side of it, which I think kind of contradicts it, is that dopamine's quite... It's an easy kind of hit to get. It's not one that ever satisfies. So it's one that you will keep chasing quite a lot of the time. Really, what you should be aiming for is satisfaction within, you know, something where you get the reward because you've put in the effort to get that reward. And that comes with a certain element of humility, because you know it isn't just like a pinball or fruit machine kind of thrill, where you've actually had to take a risk of some sort to get it. Even if you train to, say, bungee jump or whatever, you kind of earn that rush because you've had to face the fear of fucking jumping off the edge of a bridge and all of that kind of stuff. So I see why people get into that kind of thing. But if it's just, yeah, your average dopamine hits because you're watching stuff that just reinforces your belief, or you're just looking at titties on Instagram or whatever, then yeah, of course you're going to feel depleted by that, because I mean, where can you even go from there? They say like it's like a gateway thing. So 1 minute you're looking at, you know, cleavage on TikTok or whatever, and then the next minute you're looking at tentacle hentai pornography, because you're constantly chasing a rush. So detoxing from that kind of thing, I would recommend. I mean, really, I think what the whole dopamine detox thing is hinting at is just put your fucking phone down a couple of hours a day. That's about it. So use that remix button. The GC short. I was thinking about doing some shorts for movie reviews, actually. But let's see if I can be bothered with that, because I hate short form content. I really just don't. I don't get it. I don't see the appeal. I think it reminds me of adverts too much. It's like people turning themselves into adverts for the sake of, you know, attention or whatever. And I just, yeah, I get they can be quite amusing or whatever, but only in a kind of one-liner, disposable sense. It's not my thing really, but I may succumb to it at some point. But yeah, I might do something. I mean, Hawk, if you want to chop up the sections for me, I mean, there'd be a nice, genuine thank you in it for you. So let us know. And then, because what I was going to do is try and chop it up for the other channel, and then just see if that actually helps, because I think some of the sections or whatever could be of interest, but they're likely not going to find it unless I do that at some point and make it, you know, a 10-minute clip or whatever, just showing what it, you know, that one thing that it is. Could be helpful. Hooker should be on the stream. Maybe. He'd have to show his boat race, though. Sorry, face. He'd have to show his face. Because maybe. At some point I will be doing a kind of, spin the wheel thing. But only for people who donate. So, but that will happen in stream. The moment someone donates, you'll be thrown into the raffle, or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I suppose I'll get on to the old movie talk. Or actually, I might do this first, rather. So, the vid I recommend at the moment is, of course, a Sam Vaknin vid. Let me just see if it comes up properly. So, Are You a Mad Genius? I've only watched about a third of this so far. It's very interesting. And he's basically talking about how intellect won't be a deciding factor if you're successful or not, no matter if you're a genius or if you have a very high IQ. And it's really kind of talking about the connection between the creative, which isn't really dependent on IQ. It obviously has an influence, but and mental illness, essentially. So the whole thing about, you know, madness and genius and all that kind of stuff, it seems to be becoming more and more of a proven pathology. And yeah, I think that's quite interesting. And this is just one he had about writers.
So creative people, especially writers, creative writers scored much higher than normal people, healthy people, on the scales for depression, mania, schizophrenia, paranoia, and anxiety, especially anxiety about health, erstwhile known as hypochondriasis. Another pattern in these studies emerged where creative personalities took the EPQ, or the Eysenck Personality Questionnaire, and they scored higher on a scale for psychoticism. Now, I've mentioned this in previous videos. Psychoticism is not psychosis. It's a common misconception or mistake, especially among self-styled experts. Psychoticism is a tendency towards creativity that somehow compromises the perception of reality.
I just want to go through that a little bit again about creative writers.
Creative writers scored much higher than normal people, healthy people, on the scales for depression, mania, schizophrenia, paranoia, and anxiety, especially.
It's very interesting, wouldn't you say? I'm not saying it's because I'm a particular ilk of any type of writer, but I actually agree with this, and I think I have talked about it in the past, where, yeah, the very endeavour of trying to put together a novel, I do think is symptomatic of someone mentally deranged, essentially, or at least maybe even part of the process is. And he goes on to talk about how say John Nash, who was a revered mathematician, won the Nobel Prize and whatnot, you know, A Beautiful Mind, if you've ever seen it, and obviously he suffered with schizophrenia. But in an interview, according to Sam, the guy was asked, like, so what was it that made you think that you were some sort of chosen person by an alien species to try and, say, save the human race or whatever? Because this is what he actually genuinely believed. And he said it because it came from the same source as what enabled him to create so many and figure out mathematical theorems. It was that same degree of inspiration, delusion, whatever you want to call it. And I just found that to be particularly fascinating. And I just, and there is, and even that, I mean, of course, John Nash, I think, was one of the fathers of chaos theory, or maybe a different, might have been a different, field in mathematics. But even that very concept is very similar to the idea of creating something that doesn't exist, essentially, because you come out with so many different aspects of what could be part of, say, a story or film or musical piece or whatever, that the only way to really break it down is to try to control the chaos until it makes sense. And there isn't really an understandable way of doing this. It's just the madness of perseverance, I would say, or there's something about it that makes you do it, where you can't really explain what it is. You're going on your own instinct, your own capacity for delusion, and thinking that the reality of what you're doing makes sense within the reality of the world that you're denying by creating it in the first place, essentially, because you need to have a capacity for the fantastical, really, in order to make sense of it all. And obviously Professor Vaknin can speak of this in a much more understandable way than I can, but yeah, very, very fascinating, I think. And I would attest to it just from my, minimal output and effort of writing itself, where I felt like I was losing my fucking mind a lot of the time. And in a way, I think you do have to dance with your own insanity to get it done. But I'm sure there's different levels, and it really depends on the personality type as well, because weirdly enough, I actually felt like I was going more insane when I was doing it, rather than and afterwards, actually, as well, there's this feeling of, like, I don't know, death. I think I compared it to once before, where it feels like you're having to mourn it and things like that, which is pretty mental to say. I mean, I do think it's true in the abstract sense, or the metaphorical, but obviously it's totally kind of made up. The relationship you have with it is a fictional one to begin with. I mean, it's intriguing though, and yeah, from the 20 minutes I've watched of it so far, I found it fascinating, to be honest. Asa baby, what's going on? Where have you been? Where's my movie role? You're staring at your next leading man here, and I'm not getting any phone calls. So, have you seen that bitch Simon recently? He's probably gone. I didn't say hello quick enough. Well, it doesn't take much to buy one, mate. Let's face it. Come on, you can get one for 20 quid. Probably not even that. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No excuses. Anyway, let's get to... Oh, wait, my fucking... Get rid of this shit. Now that's just the level of skill you're watching, my friend. You know, it's not like I've been doing this 5 minutes. Unfortunately, I've been doing it for quite a while. So, but how are you? Let me know if you're available to. Are you still out in old HH? See what I did? Protecting you there. How is life? It's alright. It's alright. You know. I want to say it's shit, but it's not too bad, if I'm honest. How about yourself? Have you been working on any projects of late? I do think it's a shame that we've, well, I guess just not really worked on anything for such a long while, but I don't know, when Simon's involved, it never gets finished, does it? Let's be honest. So maybe I don't miss it that much. But yeah, I don't know. I always thought that we would have, yeah, made something potentially, you know, feature length or whatever by now. But maybe, maybe Simon and yourself are, you know. Because I haven't actually spoken to him for a long time. I should get in contact, I guess. But Simondo. I was actually wondering if Simon's with a chick at the moment. Has he got a woman? Because I was kind of thinking he's gone really quiet on me for the last like year and a half. Nearly 2 years, and I think the last time I saw him, he said some woman was pursuing him, but he wasn't all that bothered. But also he said, you know. And yet, lo and behold, I'm ghosted. So, oh, his last. Is that the wait? Is that the one? Kill the old. Is that what you're talking about? At least it's finished. I mean, I'm actually impressed because I know he had to do another scene for that and get the actors back in, and it was supposed to be like a year later or whatever. Oh, you suspect he does? Okay, you and me both then, brother. I'll send him a text. Admit it. What the fuck? You see me here every week. What are you talking about? I'm on it. If I was living the sweet life, do you think I'd be doing this shit all the time? I fucking hope not. Or at least if I was, I'd be doing it, you know, in a hot tub or whatever. Counting, like, just seeing all of my super chats coming in, just raking in that dollar. That would be living the sweet life. That's never going to happen. So... Well, yeah. Anyway, nice to hear from you, Asa. I'll try and tap him up. I'm sure he wants me to watch the movie, if anything else, you know. And I will be intrigued to see it. I assume you've seen it. Like, so last question, is it any good? Any good? You'd liking it? I mean, you're probably going to say, I'm assuming you were the cinematographer for it, and especially like the last scenes. But the thing is, you saying like the sound adjustments are the last thing. I think that was the last thing for fucking Bitches. Look what happened with that. So... Alright, yeah, I will do. He did try to ring me a few months back, but I was busy at the time, so it didn't work out. And yeah, that's the last time I heard from him, to be honest, so we'll see. Anyway, let's get on to this movie talk. I'm not really sure what I'm going to... begin with. Actually, I am sure. Right, so yeah, there's a section that I'm thinking of including with the movie reviews. GC's Guilty Pleasures. And I was actually going to ask a lot of you, or all of you, if you have any guilty pleasure films. Because I think it could be a funny section to add in, or it's more of a playlist really, so the odd kind of review will just be something pretty goofy, but, well, a guilty pleasure. Pretty much. And although I wouldn't say this particular film is a guilty pleasure of mine, it kind of is, for reasons which I shall get into shortly. But this actually, I didn't remember that I actually had seen this film years back, but then it came to me why I remembered this particular movie, and maybe even this is the reason I watched it recently this week, because, well, actually a couple of months back I just had this kind of urge to watch some kind of weird sci-fi gore flicks from the 80s, because there's quite a list of them out there. I think I talked about Frankenhooker a while back, and that's kind of a similar ilk, where they're these really kind of like, they're kind of quite big budget but B movies, so they're really goofy and usually just have ridiculous plots about apocalyptic kind of events but in very bizarre fashions, and this one is no exception to that. So Life Force, one of the charms of the film, at least I found, was the fact that they have a British space system in the movie. There's a fucking British NASA, basically. I'm not sure where it was supposed to be located or anything like that, but it was in there. And so when they're in space and they've got the fucking Great British flag on their astronaut suits and all this kind of stuff, it's just hilarious to watch for that alone. Because I don't think I've ever seen that in a movie before, to be honest. And yeah, the beginning of the film, they're in space and they're trying to infiltrate this kind of, I guess it's a ship, but you can't really tell because it's just this green kind of lighting, kind of like the Aurora lights or some shit. And apparently they can only go in at this point because it won't be back for 75 years or something. And so they take the risk of going in there. They discover these weird looking creatures that are kind of like human bats or something. That's what they look like. But they've all been fossilized because they've been there so long. So they kind of think that's the only thing there. But then, lo and behold, they discover these pods. And inside the pods are two naked dudes who are kind of needlessly there, I would say. And a very attractive, gorgeous woman, naked, with a pretty fine pair of tits. And yeah, she's just like, you know, and then so any dude who like sees her is magnetically attracted, like to the point of like, oh, this is a bit weird. She's like got this alluring quality that's overpowering and all this kind of stuff. But of course, they bring all of these so-called humans back down, but they turn out to be space vampires or space alien vampires, essentially. And for the first 40 minutes of the movie, the woman is just naked the whole time, essentially. She's found naked. They bring her down. I think at one point they put a blanket over her or something. But that's when she wakes up and starts seducing a dude. But then when she kisses them, because she's like, you know, a seductress, femme fatale, alien kind of thing, she literally sucks the life out of them to the point where they look like they've been decomposing for 250 years, you know, proper like mummified kind of shit. And of course, she isn't really a woman, she's an alien. And she kind of is connected to the main guy because of this life force energy kind of thing. And from there, it's just wreaking havoc amongst the streets of London. It's pretty funny. But I remembered it because of that particular situation. I mean, this woman's pretty damn attractive, to be honest. She makes it memorable, pretty much. And after that 40 minutes, it kind of starts to delve more into like the theories behind this weird species that they've uncovered and what it means. And then you've got telekinesis and hallucinations and all sorts of weird fucking stuff, and body swapping and some sort of a form of shape shifting. And to its credit, I would say with the film, it does have some pretty good ideas for it, going for it. It is also essentially like a softcore sci-fi gore porno, at least for the first 45 minutes. You can kind of tell the dude was fantasizing about who he's going to hire, and they probably enjoyed auditioning the women for it. And yeah, I think she was French. I think she's still alive. Mathilda May, her name was. And yeah, I mean, she was a good choice for it. And yeah, the only thing I actually found is like after the first 45, maybe an hour, it started to drag a little bit because it was delving into so many different concepts and ideas and things like that were intriguing and possibly were maybe, you know, the first time that had actually been used in a sci-fi film. So it's a bit of a weird one where the ideas and whatnot behind it are quite interesting, but the execution and then where it leads up, just it gets a little bit. I felt like it was dragging, even though, you know, things were fucking blowing up and it seemed like the end of the world was nigh and all this kind of stuff. I just felt like, okay, when is it going to wrap up, like what this story is about? And then the ending felt a little bit meh as well. But it's kind of fun, and I'm sure some of you might have seen it. Ah, well, thank you, Asa. Unfortunately, the sticker doesn't come up on the old... Yeah, it's a movie with the boobies. And to be honest, you don't really see... I mean, what they lead... You know how they kind of taunt a character sometimes where you don't quite see them properly. So you see them in the shadows and you see them at a certain angle. So when she's lying down, you don't quite realise how ample the breasts are. But then when she's in the hospital bed and she wakes up and she gets up and then the blanket's revealed, you're like, oh, she's pretty well endowed. And then she's just walking around naked. So then every dude who sees her is just like, oh, hello, kind of thing. And she's very pretty as well, to be honest. So, and I think I found out there was a bit of trivia to it that I was thinking, I can't remember what it is now. Oh yeah, it references Colin Wilson in it. Colin Wilson fucking wrote it. Colin Wilson, the guy who wrote The Outsiders. What was that fucking book called? I think it was The Outsider, which was a book detailing literature and about how many of these characters are these kind of antisocial or ostracized young men quite a bit. And then he's written this fucking other thing about space vampires, which I think was the original title, more or less. Which I found that hilarious, to be honest. And especially considering the actual content of the film, where it's basically like a fucking you could imagine this to be in like a hentai storyline or something like that, because it's just that kind of ludicrous. It's clearly like a very male fantasy kind of thing. Cinephile, I don't know what you're going on about, mate, to be honest. Spent years working on a screenplay with a friend. That got nowhere. Last week ended up doing a second draft of my own Cold War Paranoia 95-page draft. Today I was told I couldn't do a podcast. It's good to know. It's good to know. Yeah, the Colin... I'd love to know what that novel... How does the novel describe the woman? Because that's what I'd be most intrigued by. Fear with... Oh, yeah, that's a good one, actually. That's a great choice. That's a good one. Because that's got... Who the fuck is the actress in that? It's someone that... Is it Reese Witherspoon's in that, isn't she? Reese Witherspoon and Mark Wahlberg, and he's like the bad boy. And there's someone else in it who's quite, I think maybe Brittany Murphy, but I'm probably wrong on that. I remember watching that, I think during lockdown, and I actually had a bit of a guilty pleasure for it, because I thought Mark Wahlberg's fucking Goldbridge, I'm thinking of there. Yeah, Mark Wahlberg's character was quite well done. Especially when he loses it. I was like, fuck, I didn't expect it when he actually starts beating her up and shit. I was like, fuck. I was like, that came out of nowhere. But, Cinephile knows a lot about this shit. Mick Jagger's brothers was one of the vampires. Actually, I could probably see that. I found like the dude ones, like, I mean, they kind of were, yeah, needed, I suppose. But really, I think they were just there because it was like, okay, we want the hot woman naked, so we better put a couple of dudes in this just to say like, oh, but look, there's naked guys. Come on, let's see those titties, basically. But yeah. Funny movie. I did enjoy it. I would actually say it is a guilty pleasure, to be honest, just because it's at least the first 45 minutes. I found that, although I think I actually watched a director's cut of it, and because I remember looking at it, I think it's 142 minutes. So what, an hour and 40 minutes? I thought, well, that's all right. But the one I watched was like just under 2 hours. And I had to wonder, like, what did they fucking add into this needlessly? Because I did feel like it could have wrapped it up a lot quicker. And yeah, when he's actually like kissing her and stuff right at the end, that's just a bit weird. To be honest, it didn't really work for me. I preferred it when he was just totally in awe. But it weirdly enough, I think it kind of reminded me of like the is it a Freudian theory or a Jungian one, where it's about like one-itis, essentially, where you idolize this idea in your male mind of finding like this ideal woman, but it's kind of like a contradiction for most guys, because in one part she's like the mother figure, and then you've got this kind of like the Madonna complex, so it's like she's both angel and whore and all this kind of stuff, but because it's just for you or just yours, it's idolized as being the one kind of stuff. It's quite intriguing, and it really felt like that's what, and especially with her being an actual space alien vampire rather than human, kind of indicated the fantastical element of such a concept to quite a beautiful degree. And I would give it its kind of credit, in at least in some regards, when it tries to do the special effects and stuff, and it goes all out. It doesn't really like hold back, and it's pretty hilarious to watch. Some of them actually hold up okay, and then other ones not so much, pretty much. But yeah, quite a bit of the animatronics and the makeup design and some of the special effects, it was all pretty, like, it had balls. That's, I mean, big balls, I would say, at times. And yeah, some of the actual concepts in it, as I stated earlier, were pretty fascinating, and ones that I really didn't think it would go for. It still felt like a bit of a mess at times, and likely, you know, threw in the naked chick just to kind of maintain many a dude's interest in it, because yeah, that part worked pretty well, I'll admit. But yeah, weird fucking movie. I would recommend it, like, if you on a kind of Sunday night, or if you're with your mates or whatever, and you just want to watch something a bit goofy but at the same time a bit lusty and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's one of those films that's pretty good for that. I mean, Frankenhooker, I would say, is worse as a film, but kind of has the same element to it, where it's like this. It's almost like there's this era, especially during the 80s, where I guess the economy was booming so much that they could throw ludicrous amounts of money at such projects, hoping that they'd get a winner. And this gave carte blanche to a lot of directors who just wanted to put hot women in their movies, basically. And they didn't have to deal with the whole "this is fucking sexist" nonsense. They could do what they want, which was fun. The Lost Boys. I haven't seen that for a long time. It's a good shout, though. Though I'd imagine for some people that's actually just like a film that they really like. But yeah, this would be one of mine. I don't know whether I'm ever going to review it, to be honest, but maybe. Because in all honesty, I'd give it 2 out of 5. I think maybe if I was feeling generous, I'd give it 3. But really, the best part of the film puts on clothes about half an hour into it, so after that it doesn't. And she kind of embodies another woman at one point for no reason, or well, not for no reason, in fairness. It is kind of plot related and makes sense in a way, but once you've kind of shown her, the one it replaced it with, it was like, oh, okay, unless it was someone like Nicole Kidman or whatever, it's not really going to pull off. But yeah, fun film. You know, in terms of like entertainment, for the most part, I'd probably give it 4 stars. But as an overall film, I've got to be a bit harsh with it, I suppose. But still, it's kind of, I suppose, with these guilty pleasure ones, there is an element of, obviously, of nostalgia to them. I think would be something that comes up quite a bit. But it's also just what movies once were, and not in this whole back in my day, because this is a lot of them aren't my day. It's just more, there was a love of the whole process of putting movies together and experimenting and not relying on fucking CGI, but actually filming the action scenes, or even like you could utilize CGI, but it was kind of like a thing that was so experimental that it either worked or it didn't. And in some ways, there was a certain charm for you as an audience member to give it the benefit of the doubt and just appreciate it for what it's trying to do rather than how realistic it fucking looks, especially when it comes to things that aren't realistic. Basically, like you don't know what it would actually look like to see this in reality. I'm sure it would look very bizarre, but your own mind will pick up on, I don't know, some weird framing or whatever, or the fact that it is, yeah, clearly just blocking something so it can just cut or smash, pan into something else and things like that. But when you actually appreciate what it's trying to convey, it's more interesting, I suppose. Where I think now, and mainly nowadays, I think films just take themselves so fucking seriously all the time. It's a little bit depressing, the fact that there aren't movies that are kind of just embracing the very practice of filmmaking, I suppose. They don't appear to be just having fun with it. It's like everything has to be serious and have a message and have some sort of, even comedies a lot of the time, there's still some sort of political bullshit kind of sprinkled in there where it's trying to make a point. Obviously not everything, but in no way in the same vein as things like Life Force, or hopefully quite a few others that I will bring up in the future. And yeah, I don't know, I guess every kind of like genre or type of movie has its day, you know. Even B movies of the 80s, where you had stuff like The Blob and things like that, where it's just something crash lands on the planet. Everyone thinks, oh, this is a get rich quick scheme or whatever, but then it turns out to be an evil entity in this kind of Lovecraftian sense, and it basically demolishes. Another one, actually, now that I'm talking about it, a film called Life, which is very Space Odyssey kind of, but it has a fucking great cast. It's got Jake Gyllenhaal, Ryan Reynolds, Rebecca Ferguson, and all of this. It's actually I actually think it's quite a decent film. It's decent. It's almost like it is like a Lovecraft piece, basically, which kind of, I suppose, gives away how it may end in a sense. But actually, I enjoyed it, and I was kind of surprised that I'd never heard of it. But in a weird way, I would say, yeah, that's a kind of guilty pleasure, because it's like, obviously it takes a lot of ideas from previous films that you could argue did it better or whatever. But if you look at it for its own sake, I would say it's a pretty good movie overall. At least a very intriguing one with good plot points, good pacing, acting that works. And it's just kind of intriguing to watch, because it is quite literally about a life form that they discover on Mars. Okay, you can probably overlook that concept, but how it then starts to grow and take on its own fight for survival, I suppose, which makes it oddly relatable in some regard. And yet it's wreaking complete havoc on the people who discover it and are trying to, know what it's all about. It's just good fun, to be honest. It's a good movie. Suck my ass. But then again, I'm calling it a guilty pleasure. Frequency. It sounds familiar. I can't remember if I've seen it though, if I'm honest. But well, yeah, I'm working on one that I kind of want to bring up now, but I won't because I feel like I'll save it and then maybe I'll talk about it on a future stream. But yeah, they don't have to be good films. I mean, a few of them in my mind, I kind of know that they're pretty shit. But at the same time, in terms of entertainment, I suppose, I can't really argue with what it's going for, whether it's action or comedy, satire, sheer shitness. It's so bad, it's fucking good kind of thing. And also just movies that just have a certain charm, I suppose, whether it's to do with the people involved in it or what they were going for, and how, despite its flaws, there's something fairly decent about it. But yeah, it's a little bit tricky to kind of categorize, I suppose. Which I guess kind of leads me on to this. This is one that I watched last night. It's a German film which I think released last year, or maybe very recently. And obviously it's about a teacher who works in what I thought was a primary school, but appeared to have older students, so I don't know whether maybe it's different in Germany, but yeah, there were kids of what I assumed to be about 8 or 9 that she taught primarily, and yet later on there were students who I thought were probably nearly double that age, which I thought was a bit weird. But it's basically about the kind of political way that the staff deal with certain incidents that are going on and how they're a bit sketchy. So there's a kind of rumors of a thief being around, so a lot of the students are being accused of potentially being the pilferers and whatnot, and they kind of coerce them into trying to point the finger at certain students and whatnot. And when the teacher on the poster kind of takes things into her own hands for the right reason, essentially, but does it through an ill thought out kind of manner, it kind of all backfires. And then it, in some ways, I give the film credit because it was almost like if you were to think of it of how things blow up on, say, social media or even within media itself in terms of news stories and whatnot, you could kind of say it was like an allegory for all of that kind of stuff, and that was to its strength. I thought the lead actress played it quite well because she's quite a timid individual, but at the same time there's a certain relic of strength within her, where despite the anxiety and potential kind of panic attacks she gets from trying to confront the issues, she still keeps going with it all. But she's trying to do the right thing a lot of the time, and she's very frustrated by the political nonsense surrounding a lot of the scenarios and how they have to keep things confidential. They lie to the kids, but at the same time expect them to always tell the truth. And things like that. It was quite interesting, but that's probably all I could say about it overall. I mean, I didn't really think. I thought the ending was all right. It was a decent-ish sign-off, but more like a flourish, kind of like when you sign your signature and you get it right, and then you feel a weird element of pride just because it kind of looked how you imagined it would. That's what I'd call the ending of this film. It worked, but it didn't really have much of a payoff. It kind of felt like, I don't know, it underlined its point a little bit too much. But there were some interesting bits in it, and I liked the fact that she was a nuanced character, I suppose, where, you know, because of like her own personality, you kind of sided with her, but then when you looked at how she went about things, there were, you know, some things that were favorable, and then others that you did actually question yourself, where you kind of think like it wasn't really within her right to act in that way, and yet you kind of give her the benefit of the doubt because of the way she is, and then you kind of start to question yourself of like, well, that doesn't make it the right thing to do. And I suppose in some ways it was talking about how impossible it is to operate yourself, yeah, properly in an environment which is so protective of children, yet at the same time suspicious of them, and also when children have too many rights themselves. It's yeah, kind of depicted a lot of the issues of today, I would say, in a lot of ways, and that made it quite intriguing drama. So if that, I don't know, anyone who probably works as a teacher or has done at some point would probably get something from this film. Well, we can get onto that a bit later if you want. Life is pretty empty, if we want to get all fucking philosophical about it, you arsehole. I don't think yours feels particularly full, you know? I think this stream is pretty empty, if I'm going to comment on anything. It's that time of the month, I suppose, isn't it? That's what she said. Not in that regard, but more, you know, middle of fucking January. There's nothing going on. And we're all just waiting. Oh, I got some more money. Oh. Well, you know who you are. Thank you, dear. That's very kind. That's very kind indeed. I'll add that. Let's go high. I mean, I could talk about, all right, Fargo season 5. I'll talk about the next two very briefly because I don't want to spoil them for people, but give me a minute. Right, yeah. So you lot are too quiet. That's the thing. That's the problem. I don't know what's going on. You're fucking all timid tonight for some reason. Are you not? Drink up, will you? Drink up. Let's all do that. Come on. Has it been one of those weeks? Maybe. Just everyone's a bit knackered. Because I'm trying. It's good to know. It's good to know. Anyway, let me know and I'll waffle on about Fargo. I really enjoyed this season. I felt a little bit shortchanged by how it introduced the last episode, whilst mainly because I felt like it was leading up to something that was going to be pretty epic, and it was a little bit like, I don't know, getting the wool pulled from your eyes, because it felt like that was intentionally deceptive, just with how seemingly anticlimactic it was. It still worked, I would give it its credit for, but yeah, as I was probably going on about a week or two ago, it really felt like it was building up to something quite, yeah, impactful, or even like a war essentially. But I felt like it kind of folded on that front. But at the same time, I actually thought the ending worked pretty well. It was a nice kind of weirdly poignant and making a kind of point kind of thing right there. I didn't like how it faded in and out a lot of the time during the scenes. I felt like that was a bit weird because it didn't really do that during the whole season, and that was a choice that made it a little bit jarring as I first began watching it. But at the same time, I felt like it worked, and it was a nice send off, at least for the main character and all of that kind of stuff. And it did make a point against eye for an eye kind of. And well, actually, I suppose in a way the whole season was about debt, in whether it be financial or owing something, and feeling a sense of integrity and honor to respect that debt. And yeah, it made quite a nice point about it, I felt. But at the same time, I could also criticize it of being a bit of a cop-out, where they could have actually just made it double the length and fulfilled its promise from it, especially the 8th and 9th episode, where it seemed like it was going to lead into a, well, quite literal battle, which I felt it skimmed over pretty quickly. Admittedly, there was a lot of action during the season, so that was somewhat forgivable, but it felt like it was asking a bit much to just go, okay, that bit's done. We're just going to get into the juice of the aftermath and all that kind of stuff. But overall, I actually thought it was pretty fucking good. Better than the first season? I don't know. I'd have to watch it again. I probably enjoyed the first season more overall. But I would also say that, yeah, for the majority of this one, it was on par. And I enjoyed it. Because I'm talking about boring movies. Let's watch a vid of an incel. Well, I've got the incel. He's waiting. He's coming last, baby. Just gotta have some patience. Pour yourself a fucking Jack Daniels and chill the fuck out. There's no rush. And in fact, for that, I'm going to go for a piss. There's no one watching anyway. Like this stream's a disaster. Disaster of epic proportions. But yeah, I'll see you in a minute. Sup? Why don't you two or you lot say something interesting? You're all very quiet. It is. It's a moment where you can reflect back on your own life and why the fuck you're on a stream on a Saturday night. You know. I was actually talking about guilty pleasure films before you came in, so if you've got any, let us know. Come back with book reviews. There's your book review. I'm going to talk about The Curse in a minute, but not for long. Well, all right, let's do it. Let's do it. First, tell us what you see in Emma Stone. All right. Well, if I'm honest, in the season of The Curse, well, if you mean in terms of like attraction, not that much, you know. But the reason I actually put this particular poster is just because I think it represents the show very well. It's just, especially with Nathan Fielder, when if you actually take the time to watch it, you'll know what I mean. It's yeah, something about their desperate fucking smiles that is both creepy, alluring, and entertaining, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say too much about this show. It's a weird one to watch, but I think that is mainly because it's not really like a lot of other shows out there nowadays. It tests your patience at times. It asks a lot of you. It seems like not a lot's going on, and yet there's something very intriguing about it. It does comment on, I would say, the rich. A lot of people would say white privilege or whatever, which it does, yeah, to a certain extent point to. But I think it's more to do with people who have abundance of wealth, who make out they're trying to do good, and yet are clearly part of the problem at the same time. So it's like, it's more about image. It's quite critical of things such as social media or media in general. And if you're not familiar with it, they're both like realtors basically. So they come from backgrounds of land ownership and whatnot, and yet they're trying to build this community in a very neglected area of Hispaniola in the States, and they're building these economically green, future kind of based places that are pretty horrendous to look at because they use this reflective kind of mirror to, as I assume, a solar system, or at least a solar panel kind of system to generate power. But they're also filming it, of course. They're making it into a TV show about the fact that they're doing this because it's better for the community and providing a greater good and all that kind of stuff. And they're married, but then as the series goes on, a lot of the conflict kind of comes out because there's pressure for them to make it more interesting, to add, well, conflict itself into their relationship. because really it's so sycophantic and positive that it just doesn't work. And yet you've also got, it's almost like it's this a lot of film within a film kind of thing going on with it, where what you're watching is very similar to being on the set, where you're actually seeing, you know, both what is being filmed during the action scenes and then what isn't being, you know, filmed, or maybe it is at the same time, so you're not sure. And the series itself plays with that quite a bit. The whole concept of the curse is ambiguous at best, if not seemingly like a red herring, until the final episode. And I would argue that the send-off for this fucking series changes your whole view on it. I loved it. I thought it was great. I felt like I was waiting for this kind of payoff for pretty much the whole season. And once I got it, I was actually still blown back by it, because I really didn't expect it to go the way that it went. And it was both like horrifying, awe-inspiring, and mind-blowing at the same time. Like everything about it, I thought it was fucking brilliant. Some people will hate it, for sure. But in general, I honestly thought it was one of the best conclusions to a TV series that I've probably ever seen, because it's totally unexpected, and yet it still pretty much made sense, at least for me, when you considered a lot of the concepts and themes and the goings on within the show. And yeah, the comedy in it is awkward to the point where it's difficult to watch. The desperation, the fact that these characters are just so fake, and yet they're almost so aware of how fake they are, that it creates this very weird dichotomy within the whole show. And yeah, where it goes in the last episode is just it's I thought it was fucking fantastic, to be honest. But and if you were to ask me what I see in Emma Stone, is like, mainly I think she's a phenomenal actress. Fucking phenomenal. In this series especially. Like, there's something about her that's so... I mean, she's a rampant narcissist, basically. And I would argue that I haven't seen a better depiction of a narcissist in a TV show before than her. Because she's privileged, she's got a background that she denies, and yet is totally fine with spending, let's say, because of the fortune she's granted. And she just has this, everything's like a display. Her whole face is basically like a mask that she just adopts whenever she needs to, and yet she can't help but seek out admiration at all turns. And the guy she's married to, with Nathan Fielder, a guy with a micro penis who has a cuckold fetish, who basically worships the ground she walks on, is essentially the perfect partner if you were to talk about like a shared fantasy concept. Which, yeah, well, watch Sam Vaknin if you want to know more about that. But it's this whole idea that for the narcissist, you have to buy into this whole concept of the shared fantasy, where I am the god and you are the worshipper. And you can see that's exactly how that relationship comes about. And yet it also goes into further realizations as it goes on. It is very bizarre the way it ends, I would say. Even with what I could tell you about it without spoiling it, it's it takes you by surprise. And yet something about it just really works. I think because of everything it set up before, it could be a case of the fact that you are kind of waiting for something to, yeah, blow up, I suppose, as you watch it. Because I'm not going to say every episode of it is rewarding or whatever, because there are moments where it's just awkward or elongated, and scenes seem to drag on way more than they need to. But at the same time, there is just something about it that's intriguing, and you can't quite put your finger on it. And I felt like the last episode of it really wrapped it up brilliantly, actually. But again, I could say maybe the enjoyment I derived from it was because it made you wait for it, really. So hard to maybe. Although I wouldn't say it's particularly hard to. I mean, I found her to be quite alluring in Birdman. I thought her character was kind of hot. And there's times in this when she looks alright, but then, yeah, for the most part, she's, you know, well, she's very difficult to have any affection towards, whether it's sexual or, you know, platonic or whatever. Mainly because she's just, yeah, a self-obsessed arsehole. So, I mean, I would give her the credit of her acting ability, to be honest, more than anything. There are certain scenes in it that are just, yeah, they're so awkward to watch, and yet very, very well depicted. Ricky Gervais could only dream of having such balls in terms of how to convey that really, like, uncomfortable moment where it's like you feel somewhat guilty for having just watched it, when there's parts where she mocks the guy because he's trying to be like this tough macho kind of type, and she fucking hates him. And I think the reason a lot of people would be put off by this kind of series is because it actually depicts things that happen in real life very well, where people aren't glorified for being vitriolic or virtue signaling or whatever. It just, you know, those moments where you think you're making your point, you actually end up looking like the arsehole, or that it's actually the wrong moment to say the right thing, and that kind of stuff. And really, it's, yeah, there's a subtlety to it that I actually thought was kind of genius at times. Like, there's a particular scene where she wants to show how much she's not really, you know, devoted to the marriage, but she can only do it through showing him via the fucking footage that they've made. So even her representative side on the camera has more value to her because that's how she wants to be seen. It's actually fucking clever, I think, in a lot of ways, and demented, and really doesn't give a shit about what your proclivities are when it comes to entertainment and art in of itself. So yeah, I mean, I'm jerking it off quite a bit, but I'd definitely recommend for the ending alone. Like, even if you berate me for like telling you to watch it after like 6 or 7 episodes, you might be like, "What? There's nothing happening in this. Why are you telling me to watch this?" I'd still say persevere with it because the payoff is just fucking brilliant. It's if only most seasons could end in that kind of fashion, because mainly it becomes almost like I wouldn't say a parody, but it also it really embraces what the very concept of filmmaking is, I suppose, and that is what sets the rules. And in a lot of way, The Curse breaks the rules that it creates, and yet at the same time, it also set itself up to do that very well. and that's probably the best way I could put it without literally telling you what happens. And honestly, I'm quite a big fan of Nathan Fielder thus far. Like I haven't loved all of his stuff. Nathan For You, it's great. I think it's better in the earlier seasons, but it's very entertaining, and it's very interesting when the whole concept of the show starts to become more personal for the characters involved, and you don't really expect that. So it almost becomes like a TV show as it goes on, instead of being this entrepreneurial documentary. It's intriguing. The rehearsal I didn't think that much of, but again, there was a certain element of it that was an interesting concept. And this one, I suppose it took me by surprise because it kind of went that way, but almost in the reverse in some regard. Or you didn't realize how much it was actually setting you up for that, because like with Nathan For You, it there's an awkwardness to the comedy, but it's so well edited and stuff that you kind of think, okay, well, it's clearly all intentional. You can't tell whether these are stooges or whatever, and yet there's a charm to it that works because he's so awkward. And yet when you come to The Curse, the awkwardness is in the social interactions between the characters, and just how the comedy comes out through these beats where you don't really know how anyone's going to react, and it's really intriguing. Poor Things, I don't really know what I'm gonna think of that. I'm already slightly put off, to be honest, from what I've heard of it, but I'm sure I'm gonna watch it at some point. Anyway, well, I'll round up this a little bit because, I'm a good guy deep down. I'm a good guy. So, to be honest, this sum so far is pretty tragic. I've got to be getting like what? I'm not even halfway. Wink, wink, Painbow. You're the only guy with money around here. But yeah, the Poor Things, I don't know. It looks like it's an experience to watch it and all of that stuff, but it also does look like a kind of feminist Frankenstein, which is a bit like, not really sure how much I'm going to enjoy that. But who knows? Who knows? It seems to be divisive amongst you lot already, and this is just you guys, But well, what else can I say? What else can I say? Thing is, I think Fallen Leaves I've got on the list. I hear very good things, but I feel like I'm gonna recognize a lot of the Match Factory girl in it, which might not be a bad thing. I mean, it shouldn't be a bad thing, to be honest, but I haven't felt the compulsion to watch it, if you know what I mean. I'm kind of more interested in even Godzilla -1. I mean, that's got a crazy good IMDb score. and I'm intrigued because it's I think it's quite. I mean, a Japanese studio actually made that movie. And there's quite a bit of yeah, hype surrounding it. Mildly intrigued by that, I suppose. I mean, I don't think it's something I'm actually gonna review or whatever. But there's not really anything else I'm waiting for, you know. Maybe a couple of things. Zone of Interest, I'm waiting for that to be available. I think that's it. Maybe there's a couple more. Have a look quick. I'm sure there was one or two that I've clicked on wanting to watch it, and I was like, "Ah, shit, it's not fucking out yet." Oh yeah, One Life and Anthony Hopkins looks alright. Kind of a war thing. Yeah, I think that's it. If I'm honest, there's not really anything else. Saltburn, I don't have much interest in, if I'm honest, for some reason. And yeah, not much else on the horizon, which I guess is a shame, really. It's a good point. He's gone quiet. He's gone quiet because he's not got attention. Hooker, what are you doing? I want to see you donate some more Wonga, boy, because I know you are loaded, you autistic fuck. Fair enough. Well, Rawdy, I've got to say, I agree. I agree. Wholeheartedly. Yeah. I've got nothing to actually add. I felt like The Holdovers was a great film. And yeah, I think I've tried to watch Sideways twice just because of all the hype it got. And I never got it. I thought it was boring, if anything. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult to really know what to even make of like well hyped things these days. I mean, I can go to extremes and go like, I mean, look at Barbie or whatever. But even the same with the new True Detective season, I've seen so many like write-ups going on about it's fucking brilliant and all that. From the first episode, it's nowhere near what the original was. That could change, that's true. I can't judge it from one episode, but Anatomy of a Fall, that's fucking overrated. That's an overrated movie. I don't give a shit. The fucking main message behind that film is just like, if you're a woman who wants to eat pussy, that's all that matters. Do that. That's the main message of that film. I'm sure there's Oppenheimer. I don't think I'd rate that much, to be honest. I don't know, but I know Nolan films, and yeah, I'm unlikely to think that that is some genius piece of filmmaking. Yeah, again, I'm mildly intrigued, but have you watched it? I'd be intrigued. That's a good question. I think initially when I first saw Banshees, I would have said that's the better film. When I look back on it now, I think In Bruges, if I'm honest, I actually think that's a better film overall. Even when I think Colin Farrell isn't as good in it, you know, I think his performance in The Banshees of Inisherin is his best performance, and yet, yeah, I don't know. I think the things that are in Bruges actually work better. It's weird to say. I'd actually maybe I should. It's weird for me to say now because I've rewatched In Bruges at times. I think the last couple and kind of thought this film isn't as good as I actually thought it was and all of that. But then with the Banshees, I think on my third watch of it, or even second, I felt like the pacing let it down, and it could have said a lot more if it didn't fuck about so much in the first 40 odd minutes. So yeah, it's tricky. I felt like the fleshing out of Colin Farrell's character was at the expense of I can't remember his name now, but the other guy. Yeah. If I was to compare it, I think the comedy probably works better in Bruges. It's certainly not perfect. That's the problem with both of them. I think the build-up and suspense is arguably better in Banshees, but it probably takes too long to get there. And maybe it's just an admission of them not being as good as I want them to be. And that's about it. But I kind of know In Bruges is one that I probably want to revisit more. Oddly enough. And I can't really... Why is that? I don't really know overall. Because I even think the whole concept of them being hitmen is almost secondary. You know, it's not like you really need to believe that much. And yet it still works. But possibly because of the way the comedy works within it. And yet Banshees is probably executed in a better manner because the characters are more relatable, or at least believable in a lot of ways, and yet the balance of them I don't think works as well. I don't know. So it's a good question. Maybe that's a video actually, because there are moments where the dialogue works in a very similar way, especially at the beginning when they kind of repeat the questions, and it works better in Bruges, because I think In Bruges knows what it's trying to do a little bit more, and yet it's got more pressure on it because it's filmed in a different area and it's involving very larger than life kind of characters and, well, scenarios. Maybe a better soundtrack as well, thinking about it, but yeah, maybe. I think Banshees could have worked in that deeper sense as well, but it didn't do enough to earn it. In Bruges is more cynical. Yeah, maybe. But I suppose the very debate that we're having here kind of points to the fact that these are the two best films he's made. and yet you've got the guard, and there was another one about the priest, and that, I mean, that was decent as well, but again, it didn't hit the right notes, I didn't think. Maybe it just points to him being slightly overrated, if I'm honest. It's always using the same fucking actors for one thing, but well, that's not actually a bad thing, but I think some of the points in Banshees are good because it's like the argument between, like, should you pursue something that's gonna last a bit more in terms of artistic integrity and all that kind of stuff, or should you just aim to just live a decent life? Is that, which one's better or whatever? Whereas In Bruges has more of a, yeah, well, as I think Painbow stated, it's like there's a cynicism to it that it embraces a bit more, where two characters are clearly like at conflict with one another. It also has the film within a film element, the misconception of or misinterpretation of events that's going on. The only thing I think doesn't work for me in Bruges is the emotionality part of it, I suppose, especially when it comes to Colin Farrell's character. It's like, yeah, I get that he's in this weird state and whatnot, but I don't think it builds it up enough. I don't think his guilt is that palpable. Mainly because he's still trying to fucking get laid and all this stuff, but the comedy works a lot better. Okay. I'll put that out there for the lot of you. 3 Billboards, yeah, that's a good shout actually. Yeah, probably is. Maybe I'll have to actually watch that again, because that might actually be the better film than the two. But anyway, I'm going to get onto Incel My Ride, because, well, I'm a bottle of wine deep now, and I want to fucking wrap this shit up, to be honest. It's a fucking shame there's no football on at the moment. It's like, what the fuck's going on? Yeah, well, also Seven Psychos, it's all right. It's not that good, to be honest. I actually felt like he might have blown his chance of being a more Hollywood respected director with that one, because he had the cast, he had everything going for him, but the script, meh. Didn't really think too much of it overall. But still, fairly decent, you know. He should get a... what's his name? Rothwell in another movie. That could work. But I almost feel like a lot of his films kind of indicate this difficulty to get away from his Irish roots, and yet at the same time he wants to do something more with it. I don't know. Anyway, well, I'm going to finish this one on Incel My Ride. So, been going for fucking 2 hours already. Episode 2 has been a bit of a letdown, and I've got to say, I blame all of you for this. It's like, I've done nothing wrong. I've come into this with reviews, things to talk about, blah de blah blah. And you lot are just bitching. So let's listen to another person bitching.
Hey guys.
So, my little disclaimer in this, I'm going to try and offer some decent advice in places. I may roast you beyond comprehension in others. It depends on my mood. Overall, I wish you well. I hope you're fine. I don't want to fucking shit on you. But if you're going to put videos like this out, I'd imagine you might expect this kind of response. If you ever happen to watch it, you probably won't. So this is all superfluous. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Basically, I'm trying to get an equal judgment going for it. I want to be useful, and yet at the same time, I want to have some fun. That might be at your expense. I don't know. It depends what you say. Let's go.
My name is Jonathan Yesquez, and this is going to be a different type of video than what I usually make. I don't really talk about like much of my personal life, since I feel like people just really wouldn't care. And I'm currently 25 years old, and I've never had a girlfriend. I've been alone for a very, very long time. In fact, 25 years is a quarter of a century, if you guys didn't know. And during that time, I've experienced a lot of loneliness, heartbreaks, ghostings.
I mean, the intro is like a homage to Elliot Rodger so far. Not that isn't even a criticism, really. Or maybe it should be, but I was getting vibes of that. Yeah. I have other things I'd comment on this, but whatever. Let's go on.
And more recently, like, Let On, you know? And I feel like this is kind of like the only place I can, like, talk about this kind of stuff. And yeah, you know, I've been kind of thinking about this for a while, and yeah, you know, I'm kind of ready to tell everyone of my experience of loneliness, or my experience of never really having a girlfriend. I feel like one of the reasons why I think I've never really succeeded in getting like a girlfriend or a relationship is because back in 8th grade, there used to be like this girl named Victoria. I was in middle school at the time, and I thought she was really pretty, you know. I would try to talk to her. I had her in 2 classes, 1st and 7th period. And I guess through some small talk, I was able to talk to her, and eventually we somewhat became friends, or at least I thought I became friends with her. In reality, she probably never really saw me as a friend. And eventually I would see her in the cafeteria, and I would talk to her. She would sometimes be with her friends, her annoying friends that she used to talk to. In fact, one of her friends actually married my cousin, which is kind of sad when you think about it. But every day, like, I would try to just talk to her, you know. And
what? Okay. The first thing I'm getting, 8th grade. What is that? 13, 14. Fine. Very young. He's 25. And that whole comment about the cousin, like one of the girls marries his cousin, and that's depressing or sad or whatever. Why? Why is it depressing? I don't really get why that needed to be commented on, to be honest. But okay.
Lunch. It was kind of awkward because it would just be me and her friends. I was literally the only guy in the group. Looking back at it now, I'm surprised like no one didn't say anything about it, or they didn't just prevented me from like sitting there, you know, or like kick me out. You know, I'm surprised they didn't really done that, you know. And so one day, I guess it was near the end of 2012, which is like over a decade ago, 11 years ago. This is before Christmas break. And yeah, this was some time ago. And one day I just told her my feelings. I confessed to her that I had a crush on her. And it turned out that she happened to have a boyfriend at the time. And it sucked, you know. I got rejected. And after that, she told her friends about it. And yeah.
Well, I mean, firstly, would you classify that as a rejection? I mean, if she was with a guy and she says no, I mean, at least you have that reason for it. You don't really know it was because she had no what? So you can't expect, yeah, the the relationship she's in to suddenly end just because you confess to her in a cafeteria or whatever. It's I don't know, a bad way to frame it, I would say. Don't, you know, I'd just, yeah, think of it as like, oh shit, I should have fucking known that she was with someone or whatever. But again, I feel, why focus on it if this happened when you were a teenager? It's a long, I mean, I get it if it was scarring or whatever, fine, but I wouldn't look at it too much with much validity because you were very young. So whatever, you know.
Most likely she told everyone. And after that, I just never really bothered talking with another girl, you know. Not sure if she told everybody else outside of her friends. Most likely she did. I don't think nobody didn't really knew. Like, I don't know why I have like this thing in my mind where like I could be delusional sometimes. Like, I don't know why I make up this lie that like she told everyone about it, and then like people were just laughing at me or just making fun of me, you know. But in reality, she probably never even told like that many people, only her friends and maybe 2 or 3 more other people than outside of.
Well, I'd guess that was because you made yourself quite vulnerable, and likely in the moment you admitted how you felt, it was as if, and yeah, I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience of doing this, it's like the whole world is noticing it and therefore judging it or whatever, so you're gonna take any said rejection, which I still don't think it really was a rejection per se, but I guess, yeah, let's call it that, as something that is, I guess, world shattering in a lot of ways, and it feels like everyone knows it. But again, I've gotta say, like, if you're 14, 15 or whatever, and it's 10 years later, it's like, I don't know. I find this whole thing slightly contradictory in a way, because it's like you're saying no one likely actually knew about it. She probably only told a couple of friends. It wasn't that big of a deal. And yet you're making a video declaring this to, you know, no one and everyone. It's like, I feel like a lot of that is going on within the commentary you're giving, which is understandable, and yet at the same time it, I don't know, adds an element of contradiction, because if you were so embarrassed by this supposed delusion of everyone knowing about it, why the hell are you making a video literally making it something that anyone can know 10 years later?
That, but I don't know why, like, I just been so, like, lost in my mind that, like, I actually believed that everyone knew about that, you know, and that got me, like, really anxious and stuff like that, you know. And that was the first time I ever got rejected by a girl, and the first time in a long time, for the longest time, like, I ever shot my shot with a girl, you know. So that was that, you know. We talked a couple times here and there, but it just wasn't the same after that. After 8th grade, I never saw her again, you know. And I'm kind of glad she went to high school. And yeah, that was it for her. In high school, I never really talked to any girls, like, at all. I was just always by myself, alone. I just never really bothered trying to talk to any, you know. I really wish I had the confidence and the social skills, you know. But I guess, like, cause like, she rejected me, you know. I feel like everyone else is gonna reject me, you know, cause I always have and always did have the thought that I've always looked kind of hideous, like the way that I look, you know. Like, I'm not the best looking guy, but, like, I'm a little, like, what's the word? I know there's a word for that, but I'll get back to that in a second. But I always thought, like, I was, like, I always, like, talk down to myself, saying, like, I'm this ugly person, you know. And that would always bring me down, you know. Like, I would see other girls.
He says, you know, so often that, yeah, I can feel the loneliness of it, I suppose. And yeah, I agree with his assessment. I don't, you know, he's fine looking. I mean, he's not a Chad, but he's not anything less than a normie, I suppose. I don't know.
With other guys who were much better looking than me, you know, in high school and in college, you know. And so all throughout high school, I didn't talk to anybody. College rolled by, I didn't talk to not one single girl there. And
this can't be because of that one supposed rejection. I mean, maybe. It is difficult. I think if most guys were honest, yeah, it's tough putting yourself out there and then that being it. I mean, to be honest, I think that was your first mistake. It's like, yeah, you don't lay it all on a plate. You don't do that as a dude in general. It doesn't work. It never works. Never. And possibly doing it, I mean, probably when you first did it, you probably seemed kind of cool. Ironically, like, you know, you were just talking to the girl in the cafeteria, her friends were there, that was annoying for you, but you kind of, if you look at it from their perspective, you probably came across as very confident, and I guess the tragedy for you was that you couldn't see that. You were naive to that. And yet the girls probably thought, fucking hell, like, who's this guy who's just, you know, coming in and just talking to the girl and being uber confident. The mistake you made was actually admitting that you wanted to fuck the girl, you know, or at least, like, you wanted something intimate, you wanted some sort of relationship or whatever. That's where you went wrong. If you could somehow get that back, where you just approached and you just went with it and whatnot, you seemed aloof, indifferent, whatever, you would have been cleaning up the last 10 years. I think maybe one of the main tragedies for dudes, and not every guy, I mean, admittedly, this might not have been the case either, but if you carried on doing that in a confident manner and you didn't seem bothered by any of the results that you got, you would have got way more offers. A couple of girls would have probably made it very obvious, literally, you know, that they wanted to be, or at least do stuff with you or whatever.
Yeah, you know, but like the thing is, that was only during school, but like at church there was this other girl that I had a crush on for like the longest time. Not sure if I should tell about it in this video or in the next video, but maybe I'll talk about her in the next video. But yeah, you know, it's just always kind of been like that, you know, on and off. And I would go so far to even like use like dating apps, you know, like Tinder or all the other dumb apps that they have, you know, or other apps that you can like talk or text with people.
Never use Tinder. Now especially. Maybe a few years ago, but even then I'd say no. 10 years ago, fine. It wasn't. Tinder is just an app for women to discreetly meet hot dudes that they can fuck. That's it. That's the main thing. And that's the main thing what Instagram is for. That's all it is. Trust me on this. Of course, there's incidents where that's not the case, but for the most part, women use Tinder to fuck dudes that they find hot, and they'll pretend on occasion that it's because they were pursuing a relationship or whatever. That's not the case. Look at like the result. It's usually at best, if it's not a hookup, then it would last 2 weeks, a month, maybe a couple of months. An extended hookup, basically. That's all it is. Don't believe that it's anything more than that, ever. And as a dude, unless you are an 8 or 9 out of 10, your chances are, I mean, so minimal that it's not even worth mentioning. It's like arbitrary. It's, yeah, inconsequential, speculative, whatever. I mean, if you have no standards, sure, you might hook up with a fucking single mum or whatever, but you don't want to get involved with that if that's your first experience. You don't want to do that. Unless maybe you're fucking 15 or whatever, then fine. But yeah, as a guy who's 25, if you've had no experience, the last thing you want to do is actually hook up with some single mom of 2 kids or whatever. That would be way too depressing and lead you down a much harsher route than getting rejected by a 15-year-old when you were 15. But yeah, in general, I would actually avoid apps in terms of like, unless a girl makes it quite obvious that she likes you. Yeah, don't pursue apps to hook up with women. Doesn't matter what they are. The only way you'll ever get interest is if it looks like you're doing something yourself. And even in a weird way, this is a kind of proof of it. Like this dude, like the fucking never give up guy from Sweden, if you remember him. He's got some South American bitch now and all of this. And that's probably likely a result of the fact that he went viral and that was it, you know. But if you pursued this, I did actually check out this guy's channel, and he had a side channel where he wanted to be a voice actor and stuff. And there was part of me thinking, like, you should just pursue that. That should be your thing. Do that, you know. Do that because you've got something to focus on. You've got something to build a skill on and explore, and yeah, generally enriching your mind with, you know, storytelling at least. So if you actually built up a small, you know, pool of respect or whatever you want to call it, then it's quite likely there'll be a girl who will show interest in you. If you just jump on fucking Tinder telling them that you work here and there or whatever, that's going to get you nowhere. I'll repeat, Tinder is for women looking for hot guys to fuck on the sly. That's it. That's exactly what the app is for now. There's no other way to describe it. And it doesn't matter what they say. Doesn't matter what they say. That's exactly what it's for. Because obviously they're not going to be obvious or confessional about it, because why would they be? It's not something they should. They're not going to give away the secrets of that. But if you look at it genuinely, that's exactly what it is. And it's only good for you as a guy if, yeah, you've got the requisite attributes to appease such fantasies. And even then, as a fucking 25-year-old dude with what I presume is a pretty standard job, you've got little hope. I mean, the best way, if you really wanted to make use of Tinder, you're gonna have to get rid of the haircut, work out, and pretend that you're some sort of fucking Andrew Tate in the making or whatever.
Yeah, since I really didn't know anybody else to talk to in real life, that were girls, you know. And I wasn't like those other guys, you know, that had like game or Riz.
It's the equivalent of, but in general, yeah. I mean, if I ever dated a girl and I found out that she was on Tinder for like 3 years or 2 years or even a year and with no break, there's no fucking way I'd see her again. No way. At least have the humility to fucking use it, get what you're after, and then get rid of it. I can respect that, because as a dude using it, and I've never really had success with it myself, and maybe this is, I mean, I guess I've had some aspect of success, but in general, the idea is just meet someone that maybe you'll hook up with. In all likelihood you won't, but once you do, you can't just get rid of it, because it's fucking degrading, you know. And yeah, if you meet someone who's fucking used it for years, never actually deleting their profile and whatnot, yeah, just don't use it if you're a guy. Don't bother, to be honest. Like, every app is a dating app for a chick. If they want to fucking know you, they'll make it obvious. Leave it at that.
I never really had that, you know. Yeah, it's just always kind of been like that since then, and I don't know if it's because like fear, it could be, but also like at the same time, there's also like this doubt that I have in me that's just never gonna happen. Like, years are just gonna go by. Like, I'm gonna be 30 soon, in 5 years, or less than 5 years. I'm gonna be 26 next year in a couple months. And, you know, I just feel like I'm so far behind compared to everybody else in my age, you know. Everyone else, like, in my school grade that graduated with me in high school already have, like, kids. They're already married or in a relationship. They already have a place in their own, you know. And I'm still alone. living with my parents. I mean, I never even had like a girl like sit right next to me in my car.
That's
Like just
sad.
me, you know. I mean, recently I would go like downtown over there, here at 6th Street in Austin, just to talk to girls and only talk to girls. I did spoke with a few. I was successfully able to speak with a few. Brothers would just like walk away and stuff. And yeah, you know, I've just always had a hard time with that. And yeah, I don't know how to like conquer that, and I need help and advice, guys, in order to do that, you know.
I mean, my main bit of advice to this guy would be to just try and fucking shake yourself out of yourself a little bit. It's all too insular, too much in your own head. You need to fucking figure out what you want to do. As I mentioned, like, he has a second channel, or at least he did have a second channel that was focusing on voice acting and whatnot. I would dip into that a lot more, like, be creative. These videos come across, and I'm not accusing this one particularly of doing this, but they come across as a cry for help, a cry for some sort of empathy, understanding and whatnot of the guy's plight, which I get, but at the same time I feel like it's always going to perpetuate the very same results, because it's marking yourself as someone who isn't capable of getting this, that and the other, and that's never going to work. It's not going to, I mean, it might work in the one or two occasions, I guess, you know, like in a you might get a sympathy or pity fuck, but only if this video blows up to the point that you get 50,000 fucking subs, and you know this deep down as well. That's the kind of, there's a slight part of you that, yeah, you're talking to the boys, but there's this other part of you that thinks maybe some girl will see this, there'll be some angel out there or whatever. And don't tell me that it isn't that, because a lot of the things that are said in this video contradict the very reason why you're producing it, I would argue. Because it's like, oh, I can't believe I can't go through that humiliation again as I'm fucking uploading a video talking about the very fucking humiliation. And I'm not trying to be a prick, you know. I'm really not. I'm just saying that the person you're trying to represent yourself as, and the actual person off camera who's looking for some sort of attention or validation, recognition, which are all fine to look for. I get it. They don't quite align. Yeah. Unless he got, like, you know, if he got what? If this fucking video went viral and he got 2 million views, I guarantee he would get about 10, maybe 20, maybe 50 chicks tapping him up. It's just how things work. And in a sense, I don't actually think people go into it with this lottery ticket kind of expectation of, like, okay, I put myself out there one time and I humiliated myself in my own head. But again, it's almost like a repetition of that, because you can put out the same kind of video and you can say, oh yeah, this got like 50,000 views or 200k views or whatever, and yet I've still humiliated myself. I've still put myself out there, and look what I've got. No pussy. It's almost like you're trying to reinforce it in a lot of ways. I'm not actually accusing this guy of doing that. I'm really not. But when it comes to human psychology and that weird need to reinforce your belief system, why wouldn't it be that? You know, makes total fucking sense overall, especially if you've spent 10 years avoiding it, and then this is the thing that apparently is breaking it. But maybe it's the same fucking thing, you know. And yet it probably is a progressive move, because if he is going to get any action now, it's got to be online, you know. It's a sad progression. I need a piss, so you can listen. I'll leave the mic on. I'll be back in a minute. What's up, bitches? You're a based man. You're a based fucking man. That was the healthiest piss you ever fucking... You wish you had that on your face.
Like, I'm not rushing it, you know? Like, I just wish I met someone a lot sooner, or met someone now, you know? And then eventually get to know them, and eventually start dating them and marry them, you know? And, yeah, you know? If you guys are interested in, like, the other girls that I mentioned, I guess, let me know in the comments, you know? I would love to make videos about that. And, yeah. Does it bring me down sometimes? Yeah. It does make me feel a little less than others, you know? The thing is, I kind of have, like, really low self-esteem. That's also another issue I have, and another video I really do want to make on low self-esteem, like my struggles with that, you know? And yeah, you know, if you guys are interested in seeing those type of videos, just let me know. I'd be glad to tell you the story of how I met these girls, what I thought at the time, you know, like, oh wow, this could actually happen. But they ended up just rejecting me, you know. And yeah, I've always kind of struggled with that, and I don't know how to improve on that. But yeah, you know, I've been wanting to make this video for a while now, and yeah, I'm glad I finally was able to do it, you know. Not sure if it's something like brave that I'm doing, just like some random guy in his mid-20s that's never been in a relationship just telling his problems on the internet. But yeah,
you know,
I'm glad I was able to let that all out, you know, for everyone to see. And yeah. Later, guys.
I mean, I guess there's part of me that hopes it was just for clickbait, but I don't think so overall. But then again, how can you ever really know? But the fact that he ended it talking about, oh yeah, there's other girls, you know, makes it kind of seem like the whole, oh, I never did anything after that whole 14-year-old, 15-year-old incident. It's like, well, yeah, you clearly did then. You know, there's some other chicks that you're talking about. Maybe it was the same result, but it was almost like a weird cliffhanger. And again, it's like filming these things with an idea of a narrative there, a structure, a journey. I don't know. I wish you all the best, man. You know, you're not a bad-looking dude. The problem with being a guy is you can't ever admit that you're fucking struggling. You can't ever admit that really you're a loser. You have to pretend that you're doing something. That's all it is. That's it. You know, you might be able to admit it, or at least that you feel like that, if you find someone decent. You might be able to go, you know what, I actually feel like a fucking fraud. Like, everything I do is bullshit. Blah, blah, blah. And if she's a fucking decent human being, she'll know what you're talking about, you know. Because it is all a front. It's a nonsense. Everything is a front. You know, you're born, you get used to your parents in whatever capacity. They throw you into school, so they already make you pretend like you're used to that. And then you take on this whole idea of like, oh yeah, you're a kid at school. You're just learning or whatever. And it really depends on the kind of fucking upbringing you get. Most of us don't get a nice, loving upbringing because a lot of people are fucking damaged. And these are just the things that you have to just kind of go with. I mean, when I feature these dudes, or at least the further I go on with it, I've got to kind of point out, like, you guys have cars. Like, that's pretty cool. That's a cool thing, at least to me. And I think to quite a lot of people, it's like, it's not that bad. At least you got that. Use it to your advantage, because it can, you know, that can be a thing. Don't be a dipshit. It's I think a lot of the time you get too caught in the idea of someone adoring you just for how you are or what you have. It's like, you know, you need to appear more ambitious than that, you know. I've still got it somewhere. I mean, that could be the new... we can have another smoking competition. I'm all for it. But yeah, I've got to agree. I mean, especially the beginning, it had a very Elliot Rodger vibe. And I'm positive that that is what it was inspired from. I'm a nice guy. What's wrong with these women? Why don't these women like me? You know. And that's all fine, as long as it doesn't go to, yeah, that level or whatever. But at this stage now, it's performative. It's performative in the fucking beginning of it, to be honest. I don't want to be a cunt, but I've got to say it. The very fact that you're filming it and putting it out there, that's, you're asking for something. That's probably more of a fucking risk than you ever took with another girl, you know? It's weird. It's like through anonymity or supposed anonymity, you're going to get some sort of rush of validation, and yet that whole validation is built on a lie, because it's recorded, it's edited, it's preempted, you know? It's a representation of supposed reality. And yeah, well, I'll just get into my fucking dickhead phase if I carry on, so I'll leave it at that. And well, yeah, well, that's episode 2. It's been a bit of a bust, if I'm honest. But, well, you know, it's January 2024, baby. What can you expect? I'll be around next week. It's my birthday on Friday. So, wink, wink, send me money, motherfuckers. And yeah, let's take it from there. Got nothing else to say, really. Until next week, bitches. I'll see you soon. Take it easy. Don't, yeah. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. See you soon. Fuck my end credits. Don't even know where they are anymore. Guessing they're here. See ya.